eating.
Yeah. Enough of this fooling around here. We're going to do this. Yeah, you can eat something. Yeah, eat. Bring this man some hummus. The guest of honor. Hi everybody, I'm Dan Kelly. You may already know this is Aaron Dennis, whose movie we just watched, The People in the Olive. So I have tons of things to say, but what's the reaction? Anybody have any starting off comments? Who saw it for the first time tonight? Okay, a bunch of people. So just offhand, anybody have anything to say?
Seriously?
Sure, yeah. Come on, he's
Well, good service, thank you.
Yeah.
You want a Coke?
Anybody want to throw anything out? Anybody has any?
So how much of the story was laid out before you started shooting?
Very little.
Okay.
So, this is Jakob.
Hey, Jakob Wheeler, everybody else. Jakob, you can't see everybody, but they're out there.
Hey guys.
Hey, Jakob. Are Jakob ready?
I'm ready.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, there they are. Wave, everybody, waving.
If I had a beer, I'd give you a beer.
That'd be fine.
You can look it up.
That'd be illegal on Skype.
Okay. So,
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, we did a lot of research to learn about the issues and to learn about the communities where we'd be going, but we didn't know what was going to happen at all. So, and we were talking about this a little bit in the beginning, but our initial intention for this was to make a daily web series. So, in fact, we were kind of against the idea of making a documentary out of it. So a lot of the how to tell the story happened after the fact, where we took everything we had and created outlines and tried to put the story together that way.
What changed your mind to do the documentary?
Well, I think we decided to make the documentary because it was just there was a lot more to tell. It was a more compelling story. We shot a lot of interviews while we were there, but to create this daily web series, it's a lot harder to edit interviews with people than it is just action to music. So the web series was more of what was happening with the run, but we wanted to make the documentary kind of give it some context a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. We never got on the interviews, the backstory. Almost none of that was in the web series, and this is exactly right.
all right. So I want to just say that I'm really glad I saw this again, because the second time around was really good for me. It's kind of a measure of a movie to me is whether I actually get anything out of watching it the second time around. And I got a lot more out of it. And I actually enjoyed it a lot more, and I got way more into it. So, I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm going to watch The People in the Olive again. It was actually really exciting to watch it again. And I got, I felt even more connection to the people in it, which was another thing I think that kind of impresses me, is that I actually feel like I have a connection to those people, the Palestinian people who were in the film. So I'm actually saying that it's sort of surprising to me how much stronger I feel about this movie the second time around.
Thanks, and I think that was a little bit about why we wanted to make it as well, is because we became friends with the Palestinians, and I think going into it, I had a little bit of the perception or the stereotype in my own head about what we might expect in Palestine, and I really wanted to make the film kind of help dispel that and show what we discovered. The Palestinian people are just like us, and they just want this peace and to raise their family, but we grow up just seeing images of conflict and war, and you start to think that that's all there is there. Yeah. So I think we're really good friends. Jakob and I communicate all the time with our Palestinian friends. So.
Just saying hi, or is there further sort of progress on what is happening there, and how you guys might be involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, part of what On the Ground, the nonprofit that put the run together, is they help a community, but they don't want to just go in and do their thing and leave. They want to continue the relationship. So yeah, we're trying to figure out. Some of us might be going back next year to be there for the olive harvest and just to enjoy it. And I mean, we're just playing friends. So yeah, we just communicate.
That's cool.
Just for the heck of it. Yeah.
I remember feeling intuitively excited early this month, or kind of late October, when we knew here that their harvesting season was just about to begin. Just kind of intuitively excited as we would be about cherries, asparagus, here, or our crop, or apples here.
So what you're saying, Jakob, is they're really connected to the thing that they actually grow there.
Yeah.
Nice. So I've got a bunch of random stuff, and I sort of tried to put this in order as I was watching the film, so I may have not actually been able to do that. So 10 days, and 5 days of actual running. And the other 5 days were getting ready to go, kind of cleaning up. What was that all about?
Yeah, we got there a few days early, and we interviewed a lot of experts. So you saw like some people in Israel, some people in Palestine, and then we were filming that to create the first web series video, which we called the hype video. And then when the runners showed up, we got there, Jakob and I and some of the coordinators got there a couple days before the runners. So then when the runners got there, we filmed it, and then we had one video we put up before the run started, and then the second video was the first day of the run, I think. So a lot of it was prep work beforehand. And then the runners left a couple days before we left too. And we hung out for the last few days and kind of tied up loose ends. And I spent 16 hours in a hotel in Ramallah transferring all the footage to a backup hard drive because we were pretty paranoid that we'd be able to get out of the country with this stuff, because we figured we were on some lists and they had taken our passports, and so and they were playing the same damn song over and over in that hotel lobby. Jakob's out having fun.
Aaron will never let me forget. Ever.
Did you end up having any trouble getting out of there with confiscation or anything like that?
We didn't. I still don't know really how we did. One of the runners had some of her stuff taken, and Chris Treater, one of the main runners, he ended up having to answer questions for 4 or 5 hours.
Whoa,
so
like
yeah,
an interrogation.
Yeah.
On the way out.
Yeah. But we took a lot of precautions with our luggage, and he didn't.
So
Did you leave any of the media there as backup?
Yeah, we left the whole backup hard drive there.
You left it there.
Yeah.
nice. So Musa Abu Maria and Jonathan and Mazen Kumsaya, the professor, I'm probably massacring those names, but you set all those interviews up way before you went, so you could either hit them before or after the run.
Yeah. Well, luckily, a lot of the people we were there with, Chris Treater, Timothy Young, they had been there before and made contacts, and then Vivian Sansour, the Palestinian who you saw, she was also friends with a lot of these people too, so they were making a lot of phone calls. So we just kind of went on a tour of the West Bank before the run.
Got it.
Yeah, and we went all the way to the south where the run started, and then we went all the way back to Bethlehem.
So really the on-the-ground people, Chris and Timothy, they were producing and setting up, here's the people we definitely need to have part of this.
Yeah.
So you basically just were able to say, okay, here's the people, show up, film them, do interviews.
Yeah.
And was it basically you and Jakob doing all the interviewing and filming, or were any of the on-the-ground people with you during those interviews?
Yeah, Chris and Timothy were there. They helped facilitate it, but it was mostly me filming Jakob, coming up with the questions and keeping the interviews going.
Yeah, in that sense, I think we've almost really kind of embedded with on-draft, this kind of version journalism, if you will. I mean, we certainly were independent of that position by any means. But
Jakob, we're having a little trouble with your audio. Come in a little closer to the mic because it's just cutting out every so often. See if that
sorry.
That's good.
Well, this might be a little better. I moved the computer close enough so you can see my acne. Going still. No, I just said, it was a classic case of immersion journalism, right? We were immersing ourselves and immersing ourselves in their lives and their journey. We weren't independent of their project, of their work. But that was a way to be great activists.
So here's a technical kind of a question. Lots of coverage of the runners. And some great coverage. I mean, I like the running with, I like the cars. Did you have a plan about how you would cover the runners before you got there? Or is it sort of like just making it up as you went along?
Well, so previously the year before was the run across Ethiopia, and James Weston his footage was so great, and he had used a handheld stabilizer. So I invested in
the cheapest handheld stabilizer there was. Turned out it was kind of a disaster because it's so hard to calibrate it just perfectly. I don't know if you guys have ever used one of these things.
Like a Steadicam clone.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just like, it's got all these minute little adjustments. If you don't have it just right, it doesn't work. And we were traveling so much, and I had it in this pack, and it got covered in sand, and it just wouldn't work. So there were only a couple times where I actually got to use it. So, you know, some of the camera works a little shaky, but luckily the camera I used had a good stabilizer in general, optical stabilizer. So, I mean, you know, I think Jakob and I did probably about a total of like 5 miles of training for the run. but you know, we knew it would be a challenge, but we also had a vehicle that would take us. So overall, it was a combination of running along with the people. A lot of times, like, I'd run ahead and get that shot, and they'd run past, and then I'd try to run ahead again, get the shot, and then I'd just jump in the bus and like be exhausted, and it would catch up. But Jakob ran a lot more than me, but you know, we knew, but at the same time, they're running a marathon each day, so there was like 5 hours of running, and you can only film so much anyway, so it wasn't that hard to get the good shots, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss any good action or a good situation. And Aubrey Parker is a photographer. She came with us as well, and she was using a Canon 60D to take photos, and I was like, you know, you can shoot video with that too, because after a while, we would stay in a village and we'd shoot an interview, and the runners would go off, and Aubrey would be taking photos, and I was like, you know, if something cool happens, do this, and you can shoot some video. So there is some of her video in there as well.
Nice.
And there's a little bit of like iPhone footage as well from the protest with the soldiers. And
what were they shooting at you? Was that tear gas or just flash grenades or what?
They have they're concussion grenades. Yeah. They're just intended to scare you, but you know, and then they were shooting tear gas, and a lot of times the soldiers will shoot rubber bullets. We were told when we were going there that sometimes these soldiers shoot 22 caliber bullets because they probably won't kill you. So it was kind of it was a little, you know, scary to hear that going on. So that was one of the hardest parts to edit because the footage was mostly me just running around in circles.
You know, Aaron, it's funny, that scene, I mean, in a way it wasn't polished. It was bouncy. Is there an echo here?
No, keep going.
I mean, there wasn't polished, and the camera's kind of flying around. But I thought what was so cool about that, and I hope the audience enjoyed it as well, was it was almost kind of doghood guerrilla style, right? You almost got, I feel like that scene wouldn't scare you, because you're not looking at right at a guy with a gun, but it's almost like it might make you nauseous or sick because there's all the movement, and then you know, the camera bouncing around, you're trying to run away from someone shooting at you.
So one of the things we talked about was, okay, so you went there with the plan, we're basically just going to do these daily web episodes. And that was all that you and On the Ground decided was manageable at that point.
Well, we thought, I mean, I remember the conversation. I was talking to Chris Treater. I was like, I don't want to make a documentary. It's just,
why? What was that all about?
Well, because I wanted to bite off a manageable chunk. You know, I've been involved with big projects before. I know how hard it is to make a whole documentary, especially when there's no funding, very little funding. So, you know, web series, we do it. I was really impressed with Jakob's work on the run across Ethiopia, like that immediacy of him just with this little camera just recording each day and uploading it, that I thought that could be just as powerful as a whole documentary. And then I thought, you know, we could just string the series together and present that as a film. But then I think as it progressed, then we saw that we wanted it to edit it together and make it something bigger. So.
Now going back to the run across Ethiopia, that film is still in process and may never be finished. Maybe James took on a little bit more than he really could manage. Was that, you know, that history part of your decision to be like, let's make this bite-sized, let's make this doable?
Well, I think, you know, I thought James did a great job.
Yeah.
What he showed at the state was awesome, and you know, I know that if you, like you were saying, you never finish a film, you only abandon it. It's like you have to let go at some point. I'd worked on a project before that was even bigger than all of this. I spent 7 months in Asia working with Tibetan refugees and came back to the States and tried to turn it into a documentary, and it kind of all fell apart. And it was personally, like, it was painful. It was really set me back. So I was very motivated to get this done. And I think, you know, I've been talking to film students, and it's like, you know, it takes a lot of work to make a film. It's a lot more than you'd expect. There's so many late nights and long days.
So,
yeah.
we should probably ask this earlier. You went to film school. In the, you know, sort of the sequence of feature documentaries that you've been involved with, where is this? Is this the first feature documentary that you've done completely on your own? You know, where's it fitting at?
Yeah, I mean, well, I went to film school, and then I got to travel the world and use video to help good causes. Yep. And then I ended up in New York, and I worked at PBS, starting as a production assistant and sort of working my way up to a motion graphic designer and assistant editor. And then I started doing a lot of short educational films for Scholastic Publishing. So this is definitely the first, you know, feature-length film that I've been involved with at such a, you know, creative level, co-producing it with Jakob. And, certainly, I mean, I've made short films, but this is definitely the first big one.
Yep. So I mean, this is kind of a throwaway question, but was the involvement of having a collaborator, Jakob, who, well, let's back up for 1 second. So Jakob, your basic function was what? What were you primarily responsible for?
People. And acting as something of a narrator, I guess.
Narrator, and you were also kind of doing some you know, background stuff too?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the interviews we did before the run began, I was usually in front of the camera interviewing, and then during the web series and during the documentary itself, I would act as something later. You know, the pieces where we needed to transition in themes or explain.
Okay. Say that last couple words again. I missed that.
Oh, I mean, this is where we would need a narrator to kind of explain background and transitions between scenes. I mean, you know, I think that whether it's right or not, I mean, oftentimes in films we see, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 faces you come back to kind of establish those as authority, even though I don't feel absolute authority on the subject. But that was my role.
Yeah, and then when we got back to the States, Jakob and I had dozens of Skype conversations back and forth and parsing out the story and, you know, poring over the transcripts. And, yeah.
So how important was it, do you think, having not only Jakob as your collaborator to handle sort of more of the human stuff going on, as well as on the ground who set the whole scenario up? Yeah. How important was that to the success of this project?
Yeah, I was talking about this in the beginning, so some of you might have heard me say this, but, you know, I mean, it was great. I mean, you know, I'm sitting there, I felt a little bit like a dad who, like, every birthday party, they're looking through the video camera, they don't actually see their kids' first steps. But, so, you know, I'm like filming, and I can't be there making friends and asking the questions too. So Jakob was, like, so personal, and he was the one that was finding that story and asking those questions. So it was great teamwork. So yeah.
You mentioned transcripts. Was that integral to the ability to collaborate remotely? And did you actually do a paper cut before you started messing with media?
Talk about that transcript workflow.
The workflow.
Yeah, I mean, we had a pretty cool system going, and you know, you've quickly learned when you're editing interviews that you can read a lot faster than you can sit and listen to a person, and it's especially valuable later on where you're like, gosh, didn't somebody say something about that one key word? I wish I could go through 20 hours of footage and find that. So if you have transcripts, which we did, but those transcripts were created by volunteers, which was really great. So we had a workflow where we would take each interview that we shot and we would upload it to Vimeo, and I created a Google Doc which had a link to every one of those interviews, and then we had a whole bunch of volunteers who would watch the interviews, transcribe it, and then in another Google Doc you could see it, and it became over 100 pages of just those interviews. And then so from there, yeah, we could create a paper edit where, you know, basically first we kind of had an outline, and then we found every good quote that fit within that outline that we were
Sure.
looking for. And it just helped immensely at the end when we're re-editing and we're like, just that, we wanted to find that one phrase. And I had an assistant editor helping as well who could go find all that stuff. But it was cool. It was fun to have a crowd.
Yeah,
you know,
crowdsource,
Yeah. And,
because
you know,
transcribing's a pain.
right. Sure. And, you know, there's actually some pretty good services that'll do it inexpensively, but, you know, some of the stuff's like a sensitive issue, so it was fun to have, like, people we trusted working on it.
Yeah, well, that's another question. Those people that were your crowdsource, did any of them say, oh my gosh, the visual on this particular quote is just so awesome? Was there to that, or is it just...
Yeah, did you get feedback on, you got to use this sweet thing?
Not much. I mean, people didn't editorialize much. One person was really impressed with that guy, Yonatan Shapira, the Israeli peace activist, and she wrote, "What a righteous man." That was it. So yeah. But otherwise, there wasn't any. And you know,
No editorializing.
Everybody had different skills too. Some of the transcripts were perfect, some weren't.
Sure.
But it was
Sure.
free, so I can't.
Yeah.
I have to say that one of the people that really makes this blows me away is Vivian. She's a key personality in this whole thing, and I can almost not imagine it without her. And Nasser, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously those two people are super powerful, but she especially is just really great on camera, and yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of a rock star. I mean, she speaks like 6 languages, and she's a really interesting bridge between, you know, the Palestinian culture and the American culture too. She has dual citizenship. She grew up in Palestine, but then she went to school, Carolina or something like that. So, you know, her English is so great, and she's just so spunky and fun. That It was just great to work with her. Yeah.
And fascinating too to hear that as an American citizen, she gets her passport taken away when she arrives.
Right,
so she can't actually, she's not an American citizen when she's there.
Yeah, like she said, there's a policy, once a Palestinian, always a Palestinian. She was born in Jerusalem, but she can't go back there, and I mean, which is, you know, if you want to get into international law, Jerusalem's supposed to be an international city. And it's very painful for a lot of people that they can't get to Jerusalem. It's an amazing, holy place for a lot of religions and a lot of people. So, I mean, oh, go ahead, Jakob.
Oh, no, I mean, Vivian was really key. And I remember, Aaron, that, you know, talking about looking through transcripts for keywords.
Yeah.
We decided we wanted to focus a little more on women if we could in the film and kind of dispel stereotypes that Palestinian and Arab women have no rights. And we looked through, we didn't have that many interviews with non-English-speaking Palestinian women, but we had so much great Vivian stuff, we could go to that. Remember that got added in later in our chronology.
Yeah, and we actually did, like, there were some follow-up interviews that we did we set up a studio here to do, but we realized that we didn't have Vivian saying some of the stuff that we knew that, you know, that she had said to us, so we asked her to answer some specific questions, and she shot it, well, her friend helped shoot it just with a flip cam, and then she just sent it on a Dropbox, and we were able to just work together that way. So it's pretty cool to be able to not have to fly back, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about the cloud and, you know, in a comparative way, what's your connectivity both with cell phone and or web connectivity in Leelanau County versus West Bank?
Well, I mean, I'd rather upload a video in the West Bank.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
We got another benefit of having friends there is they were able to get us well connected. So they gave us these little USB cell phone sticks that would give our laptops cell data. They were sometimes really, really slow. So, you know, when we'd finish a web series episode, you know, I'd export it and use really, really light settings, so extremely compressed so that we could upload it in time. But it worked everywhere we were. I've been out in Leelanau, you can't get a good connection.
Right.
So.
Right.
But I mean, Palestine and Israel is so small that you don't need that many cell towers. So, yeah.
Is there a market for that here? Those little USB things? Do you
Well,
know if those
I know they have them. I think they're popular. You can also like tether your smartphone, but you need at least like I don't know. Here you need like a 3G connection or something to be able to really send anything. So
Can you talk a little bit about the just audio sweetening and your workflow for audio post?
yeah, I mean the audio was one of the trickiest things in general. You know, partly because we didn't have a sound guy, we didn't have
Right.
you know.
Right.
So I actually used this really great shotgun mic. It's a little Sennheiser, really tiny, you know, onboard mic. But it was really susceptible to wind as well, even though it had a windscreen. And it was really windy there a lot. So a lot of work had to go in to try to reduce that wind sound.
Right.
We did have a lavalier mic for some of the interviews, and then when we shot the follow-up interviews here, we had a nice microphone with a professional audio setup. So it was a challenge to try to weave it all together so that it sounded okay.
Right.
And that's technically that's certainly one of my weaknesses. So and we couldn't afford like an audio specialist.
Post,
so,
yeah, right.
Yeah. But luckily we had some things. Luckily we had like some really amazing bands donate their music. You know?
Yep.
So
Yep.
really beautiful stuff, and they were excited about the cause. So I hope that the music helps overcome any audio
right.
deficiencies.
As part of that, did you add any nat sound to help play with those issues and transitions?
I think we only used that a couple times. Anything but the real sound. With the bulldozers tearing up the trees, I added a little bit, and there was a chainsaw. No, I think the chainsaw was natural. I think I might have added some birds in one scene.
Yeah.
And then the only place I remember.
Did you ever add wind?
No.
Because you had wind in a previous scene, you wanted to soften the blow,
no,
if you will?
I didn't even do that. I didn't even use room tone. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
I didn't. And you know, there's this one scene where Chris Treater's walking and they're like, "How you doing?" He's like, "I'm feeling good." And then it cuts to him tripping.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I screwed up and I didn't have the mic on for that, so I took something else. That
Some other running sound, yeah,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, it ended up working.
Yeah, okay.
For the most part, it was natural
Yeah,
sound. Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, and I think in a documentary, like that's just kind of a style I like better, rather than adding in every little footstep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So speaking then of intervention, you're known for your awesome time-lapse stuff, and we spoke before this started that you kind of dropped the news that actually some of the time-lapse wasn't yours. So how many of those time-lapse sequences were yours, and how many did you actually do that you didn't use?
Well, I'm not ashamed to use a little stock footage here and there. I use it a lot for some of the clients I do, where I produce educational videos, and it's all stock footage. So there's a lot of great, like this one, it has the worst name, but it's a great resource, Pond 5.
Oh, yeah, Pond 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because filmmakers go out and time lapses are becoming such a popular thing to create. It's profitable for the filmmaker, and then filmmakers like Jakob and I, we can make a movie where we don't have to travel here and there. I'd say half the time lapses I shot while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But there were, I was making the film and I was like, boy, it would be really great to have like a nice, overview shot of Jerusalem. And I checked, and hey, lo and behold, there was a really nice time lapse of that. So we didn't have much of a budget, but I figured it would be worth a couple $100 to get that.
Yeah,
I wish I could say I did them all.
Well, and Pond 5 is very reasonable, and you're also using somebody who's on our level basically.
Right. Yeah, and I mean I've sold some stuff on stock footage places, so I think it's cool. I think it's a revolutionary tool.
Yeah.
And now that the prices are coming down, if you want to try to buy something from Getty or Corvus or something, it's $35 a second. But here it's $100, $200 for the whole clip, or $50.
So other than the time lapse, you did play with time a little bit with some sped up stuff, but I noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but you used no slow-mo.
Yeah, there was some slow-mo.
Was there some slow-mo?
The only slow-mo I can think of was in
Was that purposeful? I mean, we have runners, and everybody, Chariots of Fire, and did you? I mean,
actually,
want to avoid that?
In the web series, when they go across the finish line, I had it in slow motion, but then like the more I watched it, I was like,
yeah.
But in the very beginning, you see these feet run by.
So that's the title sequence. But
I might be wrong. Maybe you just did a time, a speed change on some of the footage that you had. It seemed like right before they were pushing the wall to go into Jerusalem, there was some just quick cuts of slower stuff. That's
that was the benefit of using that glide cam, and when it worked, it really looked poetic and smooth. But I didn't.
You didn't slow anything down.
No,
wow,
no.
cool.
Didn't think to use, or did it come to mind GoPro?
Yeah, I mean that would have been a great idea, but like again, like I was concerned to have too much stuff. I didn't know,
Yeah.
You know, we had
And batteries and power and all
yeah,
that.
and it's just like, I mean, you know, security looking through and they're like, what's this? It looks like a spy camera or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, if I could do it again and I knew we were going to make it through, I would have had a lot of different kit.
Sure.
What's cool about that, again, is I really like, it seems like you thought it out and said less is more, let's keep it simple. So I have a manageable workload. And that seemed to be, you know, even though you kind of think, oh, I could have brought more,
Yeah.
what you brought worked.
I think in general, as just general, when you're creating something, it's better. Less is more, simplifying it, and working within a constrained framework helps you create. So it's like, we can't go back and film that perfect time-lapse of the olive tree, so we're stuck with, you know, harvesting every little bit of B-roll you can find.
So aside from the webisodes in a deadline world, did you give yourselves deadlines here?
Yeah. A lot of artificial deadlines, right, Jakob?
Jakob!
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean...
Sorry, I turned out for a second.
Oh, no problem.
My wife, I didn't
Hi,
tell my
Sarah.
wife that she's going to be on a call.
We're just happy to have you with us, man.
But yeah, I mean, like, I was like, well, I'm going to try to have a rough cut by April. We got back in February, and it was just, yeah. But it's like, a good philosophy I think that works is just throw mud on the wall and see what sticks, you know? It's just like, the first rough cut was pretty bad, but then we were able to hone it down. So.
Did you start in the middle and work out?
Wait, what was that question?
Did you start in the middle and work out?
No.
I think we started, well, we broke it up into like 12 chapters, right, Jakob?
Yeah, I think, was it 12? Yeah, I think that's right.
And then we just started like forming each one of those. So it was kind of, didn't have a lot of chronology. And some of them were easier because they had been mostly edited.
Right.
And that was the other thing that helped a lot, was like each day editing it.
You had dailies without really realizing you were going to need them.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious how many of the edits in the film are still like that edit that happened on that first day. Certainly some when they're running into Jerusalem and before Jerusalem. So, yeah.
So I want to geek out a little bit even more. So you talked about when you were in film school, you had a pretty strong emphasis on motion graphics. And you're pretty competent with After Effects, which is part of the whole time-lapse thing. And just talk briefly about that as part of your process. And
yeah, sure. I mean, I love After Effects.
Yeah,
and
he's talking, but we can't hear him.
what? Sorry, Jakob, say again. Oh.
I didn't say anything. Sorry.
Okay.
No, he was, his mouth was moving, I
I
swear.
think he has on mute and that's from his wife.
Oh. Sorry.
no problem. I mean, After Effects is a really great tool, I think. Actually, I started using it because I got a job and they asked if I could use After Effects, and I said sure. And then I just went home and got the demo and learned how to use it. So,
Yeah, right.
but in school they taught us Macromedia Director, which
Yeah.
but like nobody. Yeah, I was like, why didn't you teach me something that didn't?
Macromedia Director.
right. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, interactive. But anyways, one really cool thing you can do with After Effects is a lot of time-lapse processing. So these time-lapses are a series of still images shot on a DSLR using an intervalometer to time the space between shots.
Big still images.
Yeah, that's the beauty of them too, because modern DSLRs, you know, each frame is way bigger than HD, bigger than 4K. I mean, so it's gonna look really nice. And I should, you know, shoot in RAW as well, RAW images, and then you have just a ton of latitude for developing it. It's ridiculous. You can get a picture that looks horrible, and you can make it look really nice.
Yeah, so you have a lot of leeway color correction-wise, and also panning on the frame.
Right. Yeah, so you bring in, so you just import it as like a raw sequence into After Effects, and then if your computer can handle it, it's a problem actually. Yeah, then you know you have the HD frame, but then you have this huge still image in a sequence, and so yeah, if you need to zoom in, pull out, pan and scan, it's a lot of leeway.
Yeah, and you had that shot of Josh, right?
Yeah,
In front of the, whatever that was. And
Yeah.
that was one, here you were trying to integrate, one of the characters in the project into a time lapse, which I thought was kind of cool. Did you try that any other place, or was that just the only time?
Yeah, I mean, we had so little time, but we were going to stay behind anyways to interview Yonatan there at the Damascus gate. So, we thought it would be a fun opportunity and to do that with Joshua. So
Sweet.
yeah, it's you have to hold really still, but he did a good job. So.
How long was that sequence of him standing there in real time?
About 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Merrick isn't here tonight, but he did a lot of, I don't think it was DSLR shots, but he did a lot of this guy standing on a cliff edge where, time went by, and he must have had his people staying there for hours because like the sun would set, and yeah, so it's an interesting process.
Yeah, it takes patience. So,
Yeah. So budget, zero budget, when you went off to do this.
Yeah, I mean, we had 2 Kickstarter campaigns that were amazing because they really helped launch this. But the first Kickstarter campaign was for $5,000, and that paid for our travel expenses. Our tickets were $1,500 each, I think, and then the rest of the money went to pay for lodging and transportation, which is great. But then 6 months of work or whatever after the fact, there were a lot of expenses. It was a labor of love. Just the time that we put into it was quite a bit. But then after the fact, we realized that we needed more money just to promote it. Submitting to film festivals was really expensive. Producing DVDs to be used to raise money costs a lot too. So we had another Kickstarter campaign for $6,000, and the community helped support that. And it was really awesome. And I think one of the really great benefits of something like Kickstarter is everybody that contributes feels a sense of ownership, and then they tell their friends.
Yep.
So it's a promotional tool in itself, and you can almost look at it as a way to pre-order a DVD or something like
Sure.
that. So it's not even, not even necessarily asking for money. Sometimes you're just selling.
So,
Yeah.
There's some basic, expenses hard expenses that were covered by the Kickstarter. But let's talk about your labor and time. How much, like, if you were gonna, what's the difference? How much remains of sweat equity in this project? Rough ballpark.
Oh, it'd be tough. Hundreds of hours.
Like 20, 30,000 between you and Jakob, let's say, just alone.
Hours?
Well, that's a number value, because that's if you're saying you're working at $15-20 an hour, which obviously is pretty minimal but realistic.
Yeah, gosh, I don't even know.
Okay.
It'd be hard to estimate. I think if it was a PBS documentary, it would be $75,000 probably. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, these are questions that are important for us because we always talk about, well, yeah, we want to make our projects, but we also need to make a living. And
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of commercial work, so that you can. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one thing too. I mean I'm fortunate because I have a lot of clients, and I have this long-term relationship with Scholastic Publishing, so I make these short educational videos for them, and it's a really good workflow. So I was able to do that on the side while I was doing this. If I didn't have that, it would have been really hard to commit that much time to doing this.
Right.
So.
And just out of curiosity, did your other clients know about the fact that you were going to do this?
Yeah, they knew about it. I don't know if they knew quite how extensive and how much time, but don't put that on YouTube. No, they're well aware of it.
And anybody say, wow, and that's great.
I mean, here's the deal, and I tell film students this, you really got to love what you're going to do because you're going to do it all the time. And filmmaking is my job and my hobby. So,
Your love, your passion.
Yeah, so I'd pretty much do it and go to bed and do it. So.
Yeah. So this is one of those projects where, unlike a PBS documentary or your commercial work, you may have a budget that you say, well, we spent this much money, but you're not even bothering to calculate what you actually spent as far as time and translating that into what would you have to make to break even on this film? That's not even an issue for you.
Yeah, I mean it's not, but it's an important subject for sure. And so Jakob and I were very inspired by the cause and
Yeah,
for
of course.
helping our friends, and we both do a lot of work, you know, for that, that's our mission, but for sure sustainability is really important.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it's like this film is a springboard for future projects. So there's one thing to be like, oh, I'm going to make a movie, give me money, and another thing to be like,
Were there any other products out of this that spun off, whether it was an article for a quarterly magazine or a vlog or?
Jakob's written articles for several magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, my philosophy with this kind of stuff is the run across Ethiopia trip I went on because I had a pretty good chance of getting a story in the Rotarian magazine, which did happen, and that paid for basic profit. I mean, I love these kind of things so much where if I can land enough money to pay for most of the trip, it's great. And of course, the Kickstarter, that's this project. I've written a couple of stories. So went to run across Palestine. They didn't make any money. I wrote a story for Tikkun magazine, this kind of progressive Jewish magazine. No money in it, but I'm swinging for a way to cover the bare.
Yeah, cover the bare bones.
Jakob, just because our connection's kind of funky, just talk a little bit slower because you do drop out a little bit, and what you're saying is important. So just slow it down a little bit so this frickin' connection can keep up with you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to say that Joshua Davis, the
Yeah.
musician, his album's going to be coming out soon.
Right.
Right.
And I mean, both the film and his album, 50% of the proceeds that we make are going right
back.
to planting olive trees. So, you know, I mean, there is that. So that's another thing too.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I mean, it's clearly all, you know, for good. It's not the most sustainable model to give 50% of your profits on anything you're doing. You know.
Well, you know, the thing that is intriguing to me about this, and again, it's a kind of a hard-edged thing, but I think it's worth discussing in terms of this group. Yeah, I mean, the more I see this documentary, the more I like it, and the more I get behind what actually happened there. We all want to do things that we can be excited about and that we can feel, you know, are meaningful for us. And it's just an interesting question to ask. But let's look at the numbers for real, because yeah, I mean, there's tons of amazing, you know, spreading goodness from this. But it's also important to look at it, you know, in terms of a project on its own, and like how could a project like this, be sustainable in its own right, without having to be, you know, supplemented or.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think about this a lot, obviously. You know, there's a lot of different models, and I'm not a big fan of the public television model, which I worked in a long time, and it's like, get some corporation to give you a bunch of money and make a movie, and then get another corporation to give you a bunch of money. I'm not a big fan of the commercial film model either, where it's like, sell, 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 sell. One thing, and this is an evolving, you know, theory, but the self-publishing model is actually, you know, when you go through a distributor and you sell a film, just like with a book, you get such a small percentage of it.
Yeah.
You're lucky to get $1 out of a $25 hard copy book, right? And maybe even less for a DVD sale. But if you self-publish, you know, you can easily make $10, even $15 per DVD sale. So if you think, try to sell 1,000 DVDs, 5,000 DVDs. If you have, you know, these DVDs are selling pretty well. I think people are inspired by it, and especially because it helps the cost. So it's not quite at a scale that would be self-sustaining. But that's one model. I know DVDs are on their way out to a degree, but you know, selling it digitally.
So for your selling it, did you have an idea of who your audience was?
Sure, I mean, definitely. You know, I mean, in this case, it's you know, actually people who are inspired and, you know, pro-Palestinian causes are really inspired by it. People are, you know, another thing is we're selling it with an educational, like, public exhibition license for more money, and then they show it, and then, you know, they can
raise money around it, or
raise,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
So that's one model that a lot of documentary filmmakers do too. So the idea I'm moving forward with is to try to get sponsorship to cover the costs on a project, and then try to make a profit through that sort of thing.
It's like the secondary market.
Right, exactly. And no, it's tough. It's tough for sure. And I don't know if it's fully sustainable unless you have a hit. Like I said, I'm lucky because I have these clients and I do a lot of, you know, a lot of stuff outside of that.
Well, see, this is the kind of discussion I'd love to have more within this group, and maybe even a little tighter sort of workshop format, because these are things we can figure out, and you just did, you know, an amazing amount of research and discovery. So I think it's important that this kind of conversation be continued and we brainstorm more about it and see, you know, I'm sure that you're, you know, that you're watching all this and kind of, you know, a lot of it's happening and, you know, all over the place, and maybe you don't have your finger on every bit of the process, but it's important to kind of track what's going on and see, you know, how it's getting out there. I'm a big fan of Creative Commons too, and
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting paradigm.
I agree. I think Creative Commons is really crucial for independent filmmakers because, you know, you need all the help you can get without having hired lawyers to, if you're, oh, can I use that shot? There's a Coke can in it, you know. But one thing I also wanted to point out, and it's really great to have a group like this, and you know, because you can share knowledge, you can share resources. But you know, it's like, I think, you know, just as far as putting together the equipment to produce this, to produce the audio after the fact and the lights, and in our severely restricted budget, I did a ton of research. I found like the cheapest LED light panels, the cheapest really great shotgun mic and external audio recorder and stuff like that. And like, you know, I'd be happy to talk to you guys about that in person, you know, person to person, because you know that can save money and time. So.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So this is maybe an afterthought, and we'll go another 10, 15 minutes. Is that okay? 10 minutes?
Fine with me.
Okay. So this clearly is a pretty strong documentary for Palestine. It's not exactly in your face. It's very you know, accessible. Where does this? Have you guys thought about where this might fit in terms of other documentaries about?
Is it on Al Jazeera?
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not sure Al Jazeera is aware of it, but
Where does it fit in the plethora of other Palestinian documentaries that are out there, as far as you guys?
Well, I mean, you know, I think Jakob and I had so many discussions about it because, you know, it's like we didn't want to preach to the choir.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of documentaries that are very, you know, pro-Palestine. This movie that came out recently, Little Town of Bethlehem, or, you know, I haven't seen Five Broken Cameras, but I know it won the film fest here, and I know it's so great. So, you know, where we came into it is like, rather than getting too bogged down in politics, you know, you can't avoid it, but we wanted to show that human side of the Palestinians. So, but try to appeal to an American audience. So I'm not sure if there's
I think you did it.
like that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else is out there that does exactly that without being maybe too extreme one way or another. I don't know.
Go ahead, Jakob.
What I took away from our experience showing this at the Boston Palestine Film Festival a month and a half ago, there were a lot of great films about Palestine, very political. A lot of them were really hard-hitting, hard to take, political in your face. You'd walk out of the film depressed or sad because of the situation. I felt like we had the only film about Palestine. It was almost this kind of uplifting, happy, perhaps kind of a perfect naivete, but nonetheless uplifting. I feel like it was a way to tell that story, the harsh story, in a happy way, which, you know, stood out to other Palestinians.
Yeah, we got some feedback, you know, from people, you know, they were like, you know, this is the most hopeful I've felt about Palestine in a long time, from Palestinian people. So that, you know, that was really great to hear.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And in general, I think my philosophy is, you know, I'm doing films for, you know, social change for good causes, but I never want that to leave the audience feeling like, oh gosh, that's terrible. You see a lot of really amazing documentaries about the environment, about, you know, all sorts of important issues, but if you don't leave with feeling like you can do something positive, I don't think it helps.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say that when I watch this the second time, I'm feeling there's sort of an innocence about it. Like, here are these Americans going to run there, and they have an experience that kind of wakes them up. And there's all the Palestinians saying to them, "You're ambassadors now," and it's kind of like, you know, it's very accessible to me. It brings something out there that I think people can walk away with and go, oh. And because again, most Americans are bombed with, you know, with information about you know, terrorism and yada yada, and this is such a different approach, different perspective.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I think in a way it's kind of timely right now, and with the recent violence in Gaza, you know, I felt it was really tough to see, especially tough when you can see that the human faces that are these numbers that are dying. But at the same time, you know, I'm really grateful to have made these friends, but to learn deeper too. Like, I know the difference between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and they're very different. You know, and it was Hamas, who's a rather extremist group, that was causing this violence. You know, in the West Bank, Hamas doesn't have much influence, and in general, the politics are more moderate. You know, and the people we were there with, they were just kind of stuck in the middle of this. You know, they didn't want this violence. And you know, another thing that I don't think I would have thought until I started doing the research, but in fact, a lot of the Palestinians in this film are Christian. You know, the average American wouldn't think that there would be Christian Palestinians, or that there's Arab Israelis. You know, there's a lot more to it than you see. But you watch it on TV, and it's like a score. It's like this many killed on this side, this side.
White hats and black hats.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, but at the same time, I didn't want to go out and be like anti-anything. Yep. This is pro-people. It doesn't matter where they are. I think all we hear about are these extremists that want the violence on either side.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Now, what was interesting, this is just a side here, but On the Ground kind of was talking about originally that this was not a political project. Clearly, it's a very political project in a great way. Why do you think that On the Ground was kind of being cagey about it, or whatever? Maybe that's not the right word.
This is a really controversial subject. You know,
sure.
We got death threats before we went. Some of the runners did. So it's not really something to be taken lightly. You know, a lot of people have really passionate feelings, and you know, I understand that. You know, for sure. But we didn't want to go in. We didn't want to lose people right away by saying this is anti, you know, this. And we didn't want to get the governments involved either. You know, we didn't want to like go. You know, it was about people. Yes. So if you could separate the politics and the politicians from the people, in that sense, it wasn't political. But to tell this story, these people their lives are completely constrained because of the political situation. But more than anything, it's like they live under a military occupation. That's politics, you know. I mean,
yeah. So that thinking that through before you guys left, that was, where did that come from? That idea of here's what we're going, you know, this is not about getting involved with the governments, this is about the people. Where did that approach, that strategy come from?
Well, I think to a degree that's sort of On the Ground's philosophy is to work with the people. You know, they're working, in Mexico they're working with the indigenous people, like in the Mayan highlands of Chiapas, Mexico, which they're being oppressed for political reasons as well, and it's like, let's not try to get the government to help. Let's just go to those people and circumvent these systems that are in place that are oppressing the people sometimes. So I think that's just kind of their philosophy. Plus, it was a lot. You know, it's because it's so controversial. It's like companies don't really want to sponsor something like the run across Palestine, like they want to sponsor the run across Ethiopia, because it's a lot more palatable to deal with. Oh, you know, starving Africans. You know, everybody's used to, oh, I support starving Africans versus, oh, I support Palestinians. You know, that's a lot more controversial subject.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of it's downplayed, but for the film.
Dan, I think you're asking a really interesting question. But I think one of the reasons that On the Ground played down the fact that this clearly was a political venture was political itself. It was a political decision to play down the politics because you don't turn off. But that said, you know, think about this: if you peel back the Israel-Palestine nationhood politics, this is a film about farming and farmers and fair trade farming practices is in itself political, though most of us couldn't call it political. You know, I think there's levels of politics here. Hopefully, we can also break down the idea that politics have to be bad.
Say that last part again, Jakob. We can break down what?
You know, we break down, this is a film that's political on many levels. It's not just Israel-Palestine politics, it's the politics of farming and fair trade farming practices. And hopefully we can break down and you know, negate the idea politics has the bad preference to be unpalatable.
Well, it's interesting that when you put it in that perspective, I think that the way this film connects us, the audience, to these people, that's a whole political approach right there. It's like we just circumvent the whole media thing and we create this amazing connection that is a completely different experience than we have normally, in society, mainstream, culture, mainstream American culture, I guess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I mean, one easy criticism of the film is that it's not balanced. It's like, okay, yeah, you're seeing the Palestinian perspective, you're not seeing as much Israeli perspective, but if anything, it's like we're trying to counteract the fact that we usually only see things from an Israeli perspective. And I don't think when you make a film, you have to show, I think this, it's fine to show how one group sees things. And when it came to the international politics, the line we drew is like, you know what? We're going to criticize violations of international law, and I don't think that's controversial. In Israel that would be a controversial idea, but I don't want to go out and say that this film is anti-Israel. It's just anti-policies that are oppressive and violating international law. And someone could say, "Oh, you're a hypocrite because you're an American." I'm like, you know what? Sure, of course. We do a lot of the same things.
But I see it as pro-people. It's not
exactly.
anti-anything, it's pro-people.
Right.
Pro-people. No. It's okay, shifting gears here, back to nuts and bolts sort of thing, or I don't know what I'd call this, but film festivals. How much of a component of, how big is that in your mix of things? How important are film festivals to you?
Well, I think they're really important. I think the film's been in about 7 film festivals so far. Like I said, it's expensive. They're $50, $60 each entry. So I've narrowed the focus down a little bit. So we've been submitting them to film festivals that are themed towards this film: human rights, social justice, Palestine, documentaries, Michigan. It's really important to get it out to the audience. But there's so many film festivals now. I swear everybody and their cousin is putting them on, and sometimes not a lot of people show up to these film festivals in general. Other times they're here. The Boston Palestine Film Festival we went to was just really more than we could have ever expected. It's really important because it gets it out there, and just momentum comes from that. People will see it there, and then they want to show it in their university. And so we've worked to come up with a structure on our website that allows, it kind of streamlines it, because actually something I didn't think of is all the time it takes to just communicate with people that want to show it. So we're like, just here, you can buy it and we'll mail it to you, but don't write 45 emails, because then you get 50 people where it's a full-time job keeping up with that.
For sure.
Yeah. Film festivals are really important, but I'm pretty excited about these screenings that people are just organizing on their own.
Nice.
And targeting their communities. So.
And have you got any kind of feedback process for that? We're going to screen it. Let us know how it went. What was the reaction? I mean, is there any maybe thinking about sending out even some questionnaires to those people so the audience can fill out some stuff?
That's a good idea. I mean, the screenings that I was most excited about were in these Palestinian communities.
Sure.
So they had a screening in Jenin at the famous Cinema Jenin. There's a documentary about that place. And then another one in a really big theater in Ramallah, and they sent back photos and what people were saying. The questionnaires, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I guess my last question. Anybody else have anything they want to throw out? So, this Michigan Movie Makers, we're a little regional group here. What can we do to help you guys move this project forward? I mean, by inviting you here, I've kind of adopted, saying, well, this is our film too. Because you're a local movie maker. What can we do to help this move forward?
Well, definitely spreading the word. If you know anybody that has interest in this, send them a link. Send them, our websites to people in the olive.com. I think just in general, following us on Facebook and just spreading the word is the big thing.
Right.
Also, I brought some DVDs for sale too. And each DVD, they're $20, and each one plants an olive tree in Palestine, if anyone's interested. So
nice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's awesome to be able to live here in Traverse City and to be able to work with people on the other side of the world and try to connect this community too. Like we've talked about trying to see if we could become sister cities with, you know, with these olive producing regions, because the olive trees are even more important than the cherry trees or the grapes are here. But just to have that connection, and it was really great for Nasser to come here for the State Theater showing, and just to be able to, like, you know, how cool is that to be able to have like a Palestinian guy come here and be accepted and welcomed. You know, I love it. It's beautiful.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, you know, at the risk of sounding sappy, I'm just really happy that you made this film, and I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, and yeah, it reflects well on all of us, and good job, you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Jakob.
Thank you.
Nicely said. Nice and slow. All right, folks, well, mingle, hang out, have some pop, or grab some beer, or whatever. We'll hang out for more minutes, and yeah. Jakob, if anybody wants to come talk to Jakob, he's right here.
Hey,
And
Hey, Sarah! Woo!
Yeah.